Tamar, you ask. Yes, indeed. In the laws about how to marry a man and wife, the law of transmitting an object of sufficient value is mentioned, and the highest Ashkenazic authority, the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, says that it's customary to use a ring, and he says that the reason is to be found in the Tikkun Zohar, the Zohar being, of course, the most fundamental Kabbalistic work, authorship attributed to the Tana, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And it's interesting that how this is so much given so much weight, both in the writings of Moshe Isserles and also the Beit Yosef, the author of the Shulchan Aruch. So, according to Shulchan Aruch, the source of using a ring is in the Zohar, and those explanations are many and quite deep. But there's an entirely different tradition cited in the Baalei HaTosafot, which are Rishonic authorities, meaning in the 10th, 11th century, following many of them were children and grandchildren of Rashi, who was from the 11th century. And they cite a tradition that the union between Tamar and Yehuda was in fact graced or took place in the context of a proper betrothal. And the way they explain it is as follows. Yehuda says to Tamar, I want to be with you. And she says, what will you give me? He says, I'm going to give you a flock of sheep. And she says, give me a ravon, a pledge. What will the pledge be? She mentions three things. One is called chosemet, which means a stamp, which perhaps Yehuda would have needed. He was going to check the shearing of his sheep. The other is called in Hebrew patil, which Rashi translates as garment. And finally, his walking stick. Now, the idea of the pledge was double. One idea is obviously, something besides a mere promise of words. Yet, if the pledge would have consisted of things that were not very valuable and could have easily been attained again by Yehuda, then he wouldn't have to theoretically send the sheep. He could have just left her with his pledge. And so, interestingly, she asks for chotemet, which is unique. Nowadays, it would be like asking, Obchansky Preukaz or something. Now, Rashi says that what she was asking for was tabat she'atachotembo. Give me the ring with which you stamp, because it was very common, as you may know, to use a ring as a stamp. Now, a stamp, of course, has to be individual and unique to that owner. A ring doesn't. Now, why we say this had to be a ring with a stamp, that's clear, because the stamp is what she was counting on. Yehuda would not leave this in the hands of a strange, loose woman. He would definitely come back, but he would want to have it returned to him, so he would be sure to bring her the sheep that he promised. But why would it need to be a ring? So, Lubavitcher Rebbe explains in a Sikha that Rashi says it's a ring because it would, although it would have been possible that he would bring a stamp there, but it's not likely because people don't generally carry a stamp around with them. But if you have a ring, that is something that you wear all the time. So Rashi understands that it would be simpler to explain that it's a ring. But he wears the ring that also has his stamp in it. And so according to this interpretation of the Ba'alei Tosafot, she says to him, I would like you to betroth me the way that it's supposed to be done. Let's not just do a one-night stand. Please give me the proper betrothal. And so this somewhat symbolic interpretation has it that when he gives the ring to Tamar, that he's actually betrothing her, making kiddushin with her. And according to the Ba'alei Tosafot, it is this interpretation of the story of Tamar and Yehuda which gave way to the custom today of using a ring under the chuppah. But there's also a huge symbolic and metaphoric significance to this, connected to the idea of marriage. Because the meaning of tabat and chotam in Hebrew and what they mean metaphorically is explained elsewhere and can be connected here as well. When the Midrash talks about Shabbat, it says, what is it like? When Hashem created the world, it was like he gave a ring. What was the world missing? A signature, a stamp. So Hashem created Shabbos. So we see in the metaphor, the 6 days of the week is considered like a ring, and the day of Shabbat is considered like the stamp. What does that mean? Shabbat, according to the book of the Chinuch, is really not only about resting, and not primarily about resting, but it's our belief that the world was created by God and has a unique, sovereign, almighty ruler and creator. Now, the 6 days of the week by themselves is the worldly. We know that not everybody believes the world was created by God or that there was a creator. People look at the world and feel the world is autonomous. This is like the ring without a stamp. If Yehuda had given a ring without a stamp, it doesn't connect to Yehuda, for example. Shabbat is the day of spirituality and godliness where the concealment of creation is unmasked and we are presented to the idea of a divine being. When it says the creation is Bereshit bara Elokim, Elokim is the name of God denoting concealment and nature. In fact, Elokim has the same numerical value, the same gematria as Hateva, which means nature. And that is where we can look at the world and say, there's, if one wants to, there's no watchmaker, to use that old metaphor. It's just everything, But Shabbat is connected to the name Hashem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Adonai. And that's the name that represents being above nature, connected either to miracles or to God revealing himself. Now let's look at the word taba'as. I just said that the name of God, Elokim, which is how God manifests himself through nature, is the same numerical value, because as you, I hope, remember, numbers and letters are the same in Hebrew. Ha-teva, the nature. Nature is teva. Tet, beit, ayin. And the word for tabat also has in it the word nature. Tet, beit, ayin. And that is why the Midrash compares the 6 days of the week to a ring, to a tabat, because that's nature. But it says that the 7th day of the week, the Shabbat, is the chotam, the seal. Now elsewhere we are told in the Talmud, the seal of God is truth. The truth of creation is that it's not an autonomous, separate entity. It's created by God. It says, Emet Havaya Liolam, the truth of Yud Hei Vav Kei is eternal. And so we need both things. We can't have a world. God can't create a world and entirely hide himself and let us dwell in darkness, not knowing that there's a God. So we needed to have a Shabbat, the seal, the signature. By the way, when we make Kiddush, we say first, Vayechulu hashamayim v'ha'aretz v'chol tziva'am. And he concluded the work of creating the heavens. That's at the very end of the work of creation. After this natural thing, first we say Yom HaShishi, the sixth day, Vayechulu hashamayim, and it was concluded the work of creating the heavens and the earth. Why do we say Yom HaShishi first, day number 6? Because if you look at the beginning of Kiddush, Yom HaShishi Vayechulu hashamayim, the beginning letter of each word spells the name of God, Yud Hey Vav Hey. And they say, quite simplistically, like creating the world was making this fantastic portrait, this beautiful picture, this beautiful work of art. And the Yom HaShishi Vayechulu hashamayim, God signed it. Shabbat is the signing of this magnificent world that he created. And that is the Chotam. Now, why can't you only have a Chotam? Maybe the world should have been made in a way of paradise with only godliness evident and without the concealment. So the answer there is that God wanted there to be a finite world where we look for him. We need to have the godly in order to shed light and truth onto the mundane. But we need to have the mundane in order to have something with which to bring the godly, to create this incredible fusion and this incredible combination of that which is within nature and finite and that which is above nature and infinite. And this combination of finite and infinite is exactly what happens when a man and woman get married. I should be more the Jewish tradition, this dynamic of uniting with Kiddushin represents, on the other hand, it's a finite life. They'll make a household, they will have their concerns. And yet in that household, there will be the manifestation of the infinite, which is represented by having children. Having children, that two human beings can have a child, is considered to be the aspect of infinity within humans. We take it for granted now, but it is a miraculous thing. And even households where there are not children, but still this aspect of infinity is drawn into the household. And that is why the custom has been to use the ring, which represents the ring of Tamar, which is the Tabat and Chotam together. The Tabat, which is nature, and the Chotam, the signature of God, which brings the infinity into the finite.